A 2001 Nassim Nicholas Taleb Black Swan event has three attributes: rarity, extreme impact, and retrospective predictability claims or rationalizations. An event carries an extreme impact, but nothing in the past or present can point to the event's possibility. It lies outside the realm of expectation and prediction. But, after the fact, some will concoct explanations as if it could have been expected, due to our inherent need to make any significant event rational, explainable, predictable, and preventable. Very often that's good as a first step. The other one is to reactively compensate for, adapt to, and overcome the situation. Some are what I would call cowards because they won't do what will work. See also the last few years caused by something that happened in an uncontrolled wild and domesticated animal mixing environment that did exactly what was predicted. This was not an unprecedented or unpredictable event. It is not a black swan event. Period. And that's it. Just like climate change is not unexpected, unprecedented. It's happened on small and large scales before. We have the information, and we can compensate and adapt, and we can also stop it. Acting like I'm going to throw up my hands and go into histrionics and start screaming irrationally at a coffee shop queue-up line waiting for coffee because you don't want to deal with the fact that someone told you, yes, we do know about this, and we know what's going to happen, and you can't handle that, and you start screaming all sorts of emotional and mental escape hatch things when you don't want to deal with, we are not stupid as a species just because you wish to be on purpose. High profile, hard to predict, and rare events beyond the realm of expectation often have a very disproportionate role in history, science, finance, and tech. Because, one, they just do that. And two, sometimes it's our need to rationalize or irrationalize things that makes it much worse. You not getting the president you wanted isn't a reason to be literally shaking as people were originally, and then the opposite side doing the their version of the same special snowflake reaction when they lost. One group was literally shaking and protested. Another group tried to overthrow the U.S. government. One group, while pissy and moany, wasn't as much of a fucking bunch of cowards as the ones who decided to bitch out at the Capitol like they did. Why are you doing this? I'm deliberately creating a crisis situation in some of you to demonstrate that you're easily manipulated and tricked, because predicting a crypto black swan event is by definition a self-parody mythology, and very importantly, is a self-thought terminating cliche backflip going on here. The dominant role in history of rare, unexpected events with large consequences breeds the same psychological bias that blinds us to their incomputable probability. You can't calculate how likely they are. So don't. What you do is you start with, this isn't a lack of scientific rigor or scientific method. This is the scientific method. If you're dealing with the consequences of an action, you can take it from the back end forward, or reverse, or one end to the other, the opposite way, with a backflip, by saying, okay, what if an asteroid hits the Earth? What do we do about it? That's survivalism and prepper mentality. What do you do? The answer isn't get a gun. Okay, just shut up. What are the outcomes of something that would take out the dinosaur? The same thing it was for every other animals. Some of them didn't die because They adapted. So what do? Learn history and stop acting like it didn't happen because someone in a church up the road or a politician on television told you to defiantly ignore useful and critical information. I don't like learning about Adolf Hitler, but in the current year, I have to learn about the mentality that causes people to turn into literal Nazi zombies because they're freaking walking among us now. Okay? Doesn't matter if you like it. Mussolini zombies, whatever you want to call them. It's the same shit. It's important for you to understand one of the most horrible things that human beings do to each other. Enslavement and persecution all rolled up into whatever this thing is that we call it. And it's 100 things. But it's always driven by the same thing. But is it predictable? Yes. So is COVID. So is an asteroid impact. Not when or where it's going to happen, but what the fuck happens afterwards. If there's no component at all that we can predict or understand or even kind of calculate, that would fall in the realm of a black swan event. Saying cryptocurrency analysis shows a black swan event because I can predict it is a that self-falsifies. You're literally proving it's not a black swan event because you're claiming to predict it. The definition of a black swan event is that there's no data available to do that. What you're claiming is a calamity is about to happen. Meanwhile, these same people who are hucksters lying to you, hoping you'll hang on their every word on YouTube or whatever, which are the ones I'm going after, immediately tell you to ignore easily predicted outcomes and the ways we have to defend ourselves from it, to weaken the effect of these horrible outcomes by saying, don't wear a mask. Don't read history books. Ban them. Damn them, ban them. Any of you out there that want to censor data but scream about your freedom of speech being infringed upon, shut the fuck up. Next thing is, if you don't want information censored, learn to hack and learn to archive it and learn to not use the following. Archive.org is increasingly big enough to be a target for lawsuits and court cases, so it censors stuff. Archive Today, which used to be the maverick that would archive everything, is now explicitly making sure that archives don't work anymore. They've gone out of their way to make sure that certain browsers, if you do an archive through them, it won't work. Which doesn't make a lick of sense because it's one of their servers grabbing the data. It's supposed to grab a live copy and also make a snapshot, not just give us a snapshot, a screen grab, which is not an archive. It's not admissible. Yeah, somebody got to the people running Archive Today, just like archive.org got hacked into. What's next? Yandex? Google doesn't do caching anymore either. But WebTech, why would a large number of archives be compelled not to do literally what's the title of what they do during trying times with politicians saying stuff they don't ever want to have repeated back to them, and large corporations getting caught doing stuff that really proves that they're really doing something evil? Is this a black swan event? No, that's immediately taken off the slate. Is there a black swan button here we can push? No, because everybody knew they were going to do that if they could. The original Spanish flu, as we call it, by the way, that's a propaganda name for it. It was really the Kansas flu. It's a flu from Kansas. It's from a military base. That's the first cases. Patient 0 was somewhere in Kansas. It was caused by farms not making sure that animals were kept separate from each other and isolating them if they got sick. And various animals, probably bird species, mixing together, and the diseases cross-pollinating and cross-contaminating each other until we ended up with a superbug. That's how it always fucking happens. Every time there's a bird flu, it's because of that. No, this isn't something that's a black swan event either, because it was incredibly predictable. That's why there are health laws. I don't want any infringement on my freedoms. You're not permitted to literally try desperately to create a petri dish that grows the next goddamn pandemic. Earl. Swine flu from, it was at the time Mexico, I got that and it nearly killed me. And I was told up and down, you didn't have it because you weren't in the news, because people were mad at me for claiming that I had a positive diagnosis for it. Within a week, everybody knew that if you got sick from something, it was probably that. What happened in Wuhan? Exactly what was predicted and complained about. The literal quote was, this wet market is a petri dish to grow the next pandemic, the next plague. That was the headline several years before it happened. Oh, well, we didn't know about that. Of course not. It's an unprecedented event that keeps happening. Cryptocurrency, it's going to have a black swan event. You mean exactly what everybody predicted the instant you brought up the idea of using monkey face pictures on the internet as NFTs, as money? You mean, the shit we already knew was going to happen? No, it's suddenly Pikachu face. There's yes, I was looking up a song from a movie and ended up seeing people talking about black swan events and then not getting the joke here. Black swan events have the third component here. It's actually several other ones, but the main third one is people's need to rationalize things so it isn't the black swan event anymore by claiming they could have predicted it. I could have seen that coming. And then the next time something like this happens, they're just as surprised as everybody else, but they keep irrationally trying to make it make sense. And then because subconsciously a lot of these people are aware of the fact that they're bullshit, it's copium. The reason that they flip out on you at a lineup for getting coffee at the store is because their entire worldview is based on them being a massive coward and in denial of it. The first step to being an expert in something isn't admitting you're not an expert. It's finding out you're not an expert. The reason I'm very good at very, very specific things is I sucked at them, and I needed to get good at them. I've met people who are naturals at being able to do something, but they always say that they feel like they have imposter syndrome or whatever because they're really good at something, but they never actually had to learn how to do it or adapt to it. And at the least little resistance to their methodology, they fall apart. The methodology of let's pray it away, the methodology of let's scream that it's the liberals' fault. That doesn't work. The copium isn't working. You need more of it. The less it works, the more you go towards it. Then there's something called the white rhino or something like that, or bull in a china shop, where it's really obvious this was going to happen, and people were in denial of it because preventing shit is hard. How many decades have you heard of the economic reset happening any day now? What about the second coming of Christ that doesn't happen? That's an example of the copium, or whatever you want to call it. I like calling it that because it pisses people off most. Our emotional human need to claim we can predict things versus actual scientific method that tells you easily, yeah, we're going to get hit by an asteroid eventually. And there's nothing we can do to stop it unless we try now to build it up. Oh, well, that's NASA. And for some reason, one of you is going to come up, well, the Earth has to be flat, so I don't want NASA to keep us from dying. And then you'll say, it's God's will. Meanwhile, people like me say, go fuck yourself. I don't want an evangelical on the board for any kind of disaster preventativeness because they want the disaster, because they say they do. Wabtech, why are you doing this? To poke at as many people as possible so you can all watch them scream and say, look at this asshole at the 14-minute and 24-second mark when I do the mic drop. If you are emotionally and psychiatrically triggered by being pointed to the fact that this kind of shit keeps happening because you won't do what's necessary to fix it or stop it or cope with it correctly, if you see somebody flipping their shit, you now know who not to listen to. It wasn't for you, the watcher. It was for everybody in the room watching you freak the hell out. And no, there isn't any crypto black swan event, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. You can't predict it. If that's part of the definition, you can't.